right, my friends, welcome back. This is going to be part 58. Part 58 of my presentation on the flood in Noah's Ark, and we're going to continue on with the phosphate beds in South Carolina. If you'll notice on the screen here, we are going to continue on with some fascinating information, and let's see how far we can get today. It says here, not very long after finding the above-named relics of human workmanship, pottery, arrowheads, and a weights brass. And while engaged in our usual visits to the Ashley bed, a bone was found projecting from the bluff. Immediately in contact with the surface of the stony stratum, the phosphate rocks, we pulled it out, and behold, a human bone. Without hesitation, it was condemned as an accidental occupant of quarters to which it had no right geologically. And so we threw it into the river. Alas, we have lived to regret our timidity, which means boldness or rashness. A year after, a lower jawbone with teeth was taken from the same bed, and we now have it in the cabinet. It goes on to say Professor Kerr and Dr. Pratt in 1867 discovered other human bones, part of a femur and a tibia, in the same bed and from the same locality. These are also in our cabinet in Charleston. Subsequent events and discoveries show conclusively that the first discovered human bone was in place, and that the beds of the post-Pliocene or Pleistocene, not only on the Ashley, but in France, Switzerland, and other European countries, contain human bones associated with the remains of extinct animals and relics of human workmanship, proving most conclusively that the Carolina specimens were found in place. And as the European discoveries were made in 1854 and ours in 1844, South Carolina should be awarded the honor of the first discovery and determination of the paleontological age of the post-Pliocene or Pleistocene beds. It stamps it as the prehistoric age of man, the connecting link between the tertiary and the recent age, the true quaternary period in its geologic history. And this is from F.S. Holmes' Phosphate Rocks of South Carolina and the Great Carolina Marl Bed, pages 62 and 63. And so it also says, Professor Holmes showed me at the museum a gigantic human thigh bone 3 inches longer than the average bone of the same kind. It was taken from these same beds. It was a remarkable fossil. And that was from a letter from Dr. John Whiteman, January 11th, 1892, published in Keener, J.C., 1900, The Garden of Eden and the Flood, page 57. Now, when we're talking about, you've heard, again, Pliocene, post-Pliocene, that's now, if you'll notice right there, I've got a little bracket where it's Pliocene. That is what in evolutionary terms, I'm going evolutionary theory, evolutionary terms. That area right there, the Pliocene, is when the globe started to cool down. It started to prepare the way for the Ice Age. So global cooling after the warmer Miocene, or Miocene, however they pronounce that. But the globe is starting to cool down. It's getting cold. And then you got the Pleistocene. Now, when you think of the Pleistocene, you're thinking of the Ice Ages, So when it talks about post-Pliocene or Pleistocene, you're talking about after the Ice Ages. You're coming towards the end of the Ice Age. And so now, right here, he's given us post-Pliocene phosphates. And so now, by evolutionary theory, this was 11,700 years ago. 11,700 years ago is when this area, with this post-Pliocene phosphates. Now, if you'll notice, I got it all in red there. All in red is what they have found. fossils from the Ashley phosphate beds in South Carolina. Look, and if you want to pause the video and take a look at that, guys, and take a look at that, it shows you got the land animals, and I'm not going to name all of them. I'm just overall. You got the marine animals. You got the reptiles. Now, the reptiles, they do include iguanodon, hadrosaurus, ichthyosaurus, plesiosaurus, and so the saurian, tailbones, teeth, ribs, and skull. And so all of that, you're talking about the dinosaurs, and then you got fish and marine life. All that, if you want to read that. And then notice under that, human. I did say that, human. And they put Indian next to it, jaws, teeth, bones, pottery, arrowheads, weights and brass. And then you got others. And this would be, it looks like they said coconut, periwinkle, a toad, pholodon, and then some other stuff there. And so if you guys want to read it, again, for time's sake, you can pause it and go over that. But all that, guys, was found. All that was found. Now, it says here, right here at the bottom right-hand corner, according to the early reports by F.S. Holmes and J.C. Keener, dinosaur, which is the Hadrosaurus, and ancient marine reptiles, the Ichthyosaurus and Plesiosaurus, bones were found mixed in Pleistocene layers with mammoth, ground sloth, human fossils. The reptiles supposedly died at least 65 million years ago. This 60 million plus years before the time of the mammoths and fossil man. Could it be that these tens of millions of years are illusionary, and that these giant reptiles and mammals and man lived at the same time? Amen, brother. They sure did. Now, this is a page out of the Phosphate Rocks of South Carolina, their history and development. And this is that book, again, I showed you that you can get a PDF format for free online. I'm just going to read this one page from you guys. Now, he says, it was in this post-Pliocene age, again, by evolutionary theory, this was 11,700 years ago, when the American elephant or mammoth, the mastodon, rhinoceros, the megatherium, hadrosaurus, and other gigantic quadrupeds roamed the Carolina forest and repaired periodically to these salt lakes or lagoons, or as they are called in Kentucky, salt licks. Now notice that he's talking about these animals that are living together. And during a series of indefinite ages, engaged as they were, first sipping brine, then licking salt, and depositing their fecal remains, and ultimately their bones and teeth. Now, it gives the hint here. Now, I'm supposing here that, now again, I haven't read his whole book, guys, so give me some leeway here. I have not read his whole book here, but it does look as if F.S. Holmes is using the uniformitarian type of geology when he's talking in here. I'm not sure if he's a theistic evolutionist. I'm not sure. But it does appear that he is holding on to that. And so, but going on here, I'm just going to back up to where right after it said called in Kentucky salt licks. And during a series of indefinite ages, engaged as they were, first sipping brine, then licking salt and depositing their fecal remains and ultimately their bones and teeth. In fact, their dead bodies in these great open crawls or pens, thus preparing as ordained beforehand by the great master builder of our earth. Now, he's referring to God there as the great master builder of our earth, a storehouse of rich material for man's use. They converted the rocks prepared of old at the bottom of the ocean into the basis of a most wonderful fertilizing substance, a substance which was to become, by the labor and sweat of man's brow, a renovator of his worn out soils, causing it to yield in overflowing measures bread and meat for the use of the sons and daughters of men, and not for their use only, but to give food in great abundance to the animals who are man's companions in the present age, to the ant, the bee, and the butterfly, animated links in the chain of creation by which the whole fabric itself is sustained. God never intended that it should be thus used before the appointed time, ordained of old by Him who formed and fashioned these rocks. And so now you got to remember, this guy was writing. If you remember this chart here, look at that 1830 there. Just get Lyle and go straight down. You see 1830, where it says most scientists believe in catastrophism. Now, he was writing during this time period here, where they're in this change, this switching, the switch effect that society had when they came from mostly people believing in catastrophism and the Bible and the biblical flood. They had the scriptures. Most people believed in this, and then these few gentlemen right here, if I'll use that term loosely, decided to throw God out. I'm not including Owen into that. I'm talking about Hutton, Lyell, and Darwin. These individuals here decided to take, as Lyell said, free the science from Moses is what he wanted to do. I mean, now come on now. I mean, that's a direct attack on God's word. That's what they wanted. They wanted to separate the Bible from quote unquote science. And that has caused the whole science, all of science, to start going downhill. Now there are people, one group called the Creation Research Society. They are scientists, guys. They are scientists, and they do believe the Bible. They do believe the Bible, and they research and include God in, and they have made some incredible discoveries. And so, it just depends on where you're going to get your science from. But if you try to get it from mainstream science, it's going to be the uniformitarian belief, the evolutionary belief, and they are not going to want to have anything to do with God whatsoever. And so, but this is the time that Holmes is writing in. And so you can see that influence of the Lord and the Bible and scriptures into his writing and stuff. And so, but this right here, this is that pivotal point in time when we went off track and decided to throw God out and put evolution in its place. Now, you notice, so far, I have never seen, I haven't, at least until this present time of this video, I haven't seen anywhere where he says the word dinosaur in his book. Well, if you'll notice, the word dinosaur, Owen, wasn't even coined until until 1840, 1842. Most of your literature is going to say 1840 or 1841, but I have seen other sources which even said even up to 1842. But right in during that time period, for simplification, somewhere between 1840 and 1842 is when that word dinosaur was first coined. So he's writing around this time. He's studying, he's researching, and then his book was published in 1870. And so I have a dictionary, just to give you an example. I have a dictionary from 1873. 1873, guys. And you know what? It does not have the word dinosaur in it. This is a Webster's dictionary, guys. A very well-known dictionary. Page 375, it does not have the word dinosaur in it. Interestingly enough, it does have Dinotherium in it, that one weird-looking elephant, and there's a picture of it right there on the bottom of that one page there. You can see it. It had that in there, but it did not have the word dinosaur in it. And so you can see why. You can see why he wouldn't have the word dinosaur in there. He just wasn't used. It wasn't a word that was used that much. He was He had published his book in 1870, and so even by the time 3 years later, when Webster's was published, it didn't have it in it either, and so not a big deal at all. I tell you what, let's stop right there. When we come back, I'm looking at my slides here. We are going to get into some interesting things that the Creation Research Society has written about, and I included it in here. And when we come back next time, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you where they're talking about. And I believe they're talking about the phosphate beds, even though they didn't mention it in the article. I believe they're talking about that exact area, because the location where these fossils were was at the location of the phosphate beds, and so in Florida. And so, but we're going to look at that. We're going to look at it's an old article, I believe from 1980s. Yeah, 1985 to be exact. And so we're going to look at that, and we're going to continue on. And I'm probably looking at maybe two, maybe three more videos before we finish this. And so, but you guys take care, chew on this, and we'll see you next time. I love you. Bye-bye.